Today, I'm in conversation with Ciaran McSharry, the CEO of Jambo, a digital financial services company. If you enjoy this episode, remember to subscribe, to like, and to share. Let's get down to some work. Greetings. Welcome to In Conversation with Trevor UK series, brought to you by the Nyaradzo Group. I go beyond the headlines and beyond the sensational. If you enjoy this series, remember to subscribe, to like, and to share. Let's get down to some work. Ciaran McSharry, we meet again.
And indeed, an absolute pleasure. Nice to see you again. Beautiful. And welcome to the UK.
Oh, thank you for that. So the last time we were together, 2 years ago, we looked at the banking terrain, your time you had spent with First Bank. And as I was watching the episode yesterday in preparation for this, I was reminded that we talked about the future of banking, mobile banking.
That's right.
Bitcoin and blockchain, and digital banking generally. And now you are the CEO of this startup, Jamboo Financial Services, which is a digital financial services company. Unpack to us what the thinking is around Jamboo Financial Services.
So Jambo was founded by two of your fellow countrymen, Innocent Chinyama, Takwana Charanini, who came up with the idea that the African diaspora as an entity are underserved and often marginalized from a banking and financial services perspective. So the idea was born that we could create a bank here in the UK to serve initially the UK African diaspora. The diaspora based in the UK.
Them, yeah.
And I think, officially there's about 170, 180,000 Zimbabwe diaspora here, but I think that's way understated in terms of the numbers. But the idea is to build a one-stop financial services hub that is essentially for Africans, founded by Africans, run by Africans, and to give them control over their financials and their financial services. So the idea basically is that you come here, let's use a care worker or an NHS worker, which is where probably the majority of Zimbabweans are. So they get paid their salary. Their salary can be paid into their Jambo bank account. They can do all of their UK banking. They can pay their mortgage or their rent. They can buy their insurance here, do their shopping, buy their coffee, all of those usual things that you do out of your bank account. But the idea also then is that if they want to remit data back home to family, they can buy data on the platform, and that gets sent back to mum and dad, brother, sister, whoever. They can equally remit money back home on that platform by taking money from the Jambo account, moving it to the remittance account, boom, it goes. And then through strategic partnerships, we plan to also open insurance and investment opportunities for the diaspora. Again, they can do all of that through their app. And that can work for the customer, but it can also work for our insurance and financial services partners who we're working with as well. And that's where I come from. If you think about at the moment, a lot of the remittances go back for consumption. Or some of it's meant to go for consumption, some of it for investment. But the reality is, we all know, because of the way it's managed, it goes through the money transfer agencies, banks, cash is picked up, it's spent on consumption. This way, they can actually decide, well, X% is going to my family for consumption, Y% is going into my investment account, and it's going to be invested. I control that.
And this is fascinating because what is actually going to Zim is huge. The number from the UK to Zimbabwe is huge. But the disadvantage, looking at the numbers, is that it costs, for instance, sending money to India Zambia from the UK, it costs about 5%. So 3%.
3%, yeah.
Sending money from from the UK to Zimbabwe costs 5%. Sorry, 8%.
Yeah.
So
it's
there's
about
a
8% versus 3%, roughly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what advantages are you offering there now?
So we're going to offer we're building this out in a phased approach.
Yeah.
Okay, and we can go into detail of where we are and where the phases are. There's a future phase will be the remittances. Our idea there is to build essentially a prepaid card, debit card, if you like, which can be issued to the account holder in the UK, but they can then have a sibling card, which they can send to the family in Zimbabwe. So let's say you're sitting at home on a Saturday night and you phone me and you say, I've got no money, Ciaran. I need some help because I need to go and shop. I can sit in my app, say, okay, send $200 to Trevor. It goes to that card immediately. Now you can go to the shop or you can go to the ATM and you can get it. The convenience.
It goes
huge.
to my bank in Zim.
No, it goes to a prepaid card. I have the account is mine. It sits in the UK until you actually go to the ATM and withdraw the money, or you go to the shop and swipe and spend the money. Only at that point does it leave the account in the UK and go to Zim. So it's digitizing, if you like, that last mile.
Yeah.
You're taking all of that hassle of queuing up at a bank with identification, etc. You're taking that out. Now, our idea will be our rates will be more favorable. Yes, there will be fees, but the fees will be more favorable. Now, I did a test of this when I was in Zimbabwe in May this year on the card. And
so the card is already functional.
Well, it's functional. We haven't signed deals. We just did a test, so it's in the future. But I did a test. I went to various shops and paid no problem. So all of that worked beautifully. I also went to an ATM. That was a bit of a hassle trying to find an ATM that worked, but I got one. And I only took out $100, okay? And that's an important figure, and I'll tell you why. Because when I looked at the total cost from a sterling perspective, MTA versus the card, it was marginally more cost effective on the card. Why is the $100 more important? It was a small amount.
Yeah.
If I took out $200, it would be sufficient, much more cost effective because it's a fixed fee to withdraw. So that $3 I paid to withdraw money from the cash point would be $3 whether I drew $100, $200, $300. So the cost becomes more favorable.
Let's go to so you say you're done with phase one. Describe to us what phase one is all
phase
about
one
and what phase two
sure.
is going to look like.
So phase one is fairly basic. Okay. So phase one was basically allowing you to actually move money into your account, make transfers, etc. And we've deliberately only opened that up to a small number of people. And we did that about 2 weeks ago. And that's all going well. So people have onboarded, they've moved money in, they've moved money out, etc. This last week, or earlier this week, I should say, we launched the mobile data. Again, we're doing this slowly, steadily, because we want to make sure we iron out any problems before we go wider public. So customers can now come in and buy data and remit the data. That's up and running. The next phase is to open a virtual card, which basically means, when you come here or you go to the shop, you can pay by your phone. You can do all of your transfers, online purchases, all of that stuff can be done now from your account. And that'll go live probably in October this year.
Okay. Is that part of the phase two?
That's part of phase two.
Okay.
Phase two, phase three, because the phase one was the basic, phase two data, call it phase three. We'll also, at that stage, before then, launch probably what we call BACS, which is the automatic credit system. That's essential because we have to have the ability it's more about salaries in the early stages. Most companies will pay salaries. NHS, for example, will be through BACS, automatic credit.
Okay.
If you haven't got that, they're not going to have the salary go into your account. Okay. So we have to have that. That will go live certainly by October, but perhaps before. And at the same time, the direct debit function is important as well. So that will allow your utility company, for example, if you're paying by direct debit, they can say your bill is X. I'm taking the money out of your account. At that stage, you have a fully functioning UK account. So people can, the same way they go to Barclays, HSBC, etc., they've got all of that functionality working.
Phase two?
Phase two, beyond that, then, will be the remittances.
Okay.
And then
investments.
Yeah. And then we're working with a number of companies at the moment already on talking about the insurance and the investment side of it.
Mm-hmm. So it's insurance, it's investment. Am I right that you are focusing on renewable energy and those kind of spaces?
Yeah, it will depend to some extent on where our strategic partners want to go.
Yeah.
But if we just take a step back and look at the broader picture, last year in Zimbabwe, and we just remember we started in Zimbabwe, founded by 2 Zimbabweans, so it's a market the 3 of us know well.
I'm fascinated by that Zimbabwe is your sandbox.
Yeah.
And perhaps one of the most difficult markets there is. What's been the thinking of saying Zimbabwe is going to be our sandbox?
Innocent Akwana grew up in Zimbabwe. They know Zimbabwe. I spent 6 years running a bank there. It's probably the market we know best.
Right.
So it was a logical step for us to say, okay, let's start there and build from there. And then we can build out. So we're already, talking to some people from other countries where we can scale this model.
So which other countries? Zimbabwe is
okay, so we'll start with Zimbabwe. Yeah. I mean, we haven't decided which country, but if you go back to the remittances, right?
Yeah.
There's something like 100 billion of remittances coming into Africa every year. And I'd say over 50% of that goes to Egypt, Morocco, Nigeria. Add Ghana in there, that's another huge one.
Nigeria? You've already mentioned.
Nigeria, yeah. Nigeria, Egypt, Morocco, and Ghana are probably the biggest. Kenya's up there as well. They would be, to some extent, the next logical port of call.
What's going to decide that? Your partnerships or the
partnerships?
Market itself?
Partnerships. It'll have to be partnerships. Yeah. And how well and how quickly we can build out those partnerships.
How critically important has been finding the right people to build the technology, the app itself? How has that been?
That has been.
Talk to us about that and the experience.
It's absolutely critical. And I'm not a technical guy. I'm an accountant. I'm a banker. I know debits, credits, all of that good stuff. So please don't ask me any technical questions. But we were very fortunate. Before I came on board, the guys had done a demo with one company.
D-Labs.
No, it was before D-Labs.
Before D-Labs, okay.
That didn't work out very well. So we were then recommended D-Labs, and we got on board with those guys. And I have to say, I can't speak highly enough of them. They have been a fabulous partner, somebody who goes above and beyond. Not only that, but actually the CEO has invested some of his money into the business. So he believes in the business. He's put his own money in there. And that every step of the way.
I'm asking that question because for viewers watching out there, one cannot emphasize enough the importance of getting the right technology partner, the partner who knows what they're doing. You've already said you had a terrible experience with one provider. Yeah. Talk to us about the importance of getting just the right technology partner for what you're doing. These guys have built 3 unicorns, worth $8.7 billion. So they know what they're doing.
Absolutely.
But I suspect they're very expensive too.
No, they're not actually. I don't think they are, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
Yes, if I said the value here, our viewers would think, yes, that's expensive.
Yeah.
But for what we're building, it's actually not that expensive. But you're absolutely right. Getting the right partner, not just technology, but in any business venture, I think it's absolutely critical. Because with a partner, it's a bit like any relationship. You have to understand each other.
Yeah.
It has to be give and take. It can't all be, well, hang on, you said this, therefore that's all I'm delivering. Because things change. They change in the world, but they also change as you develop things. And this is one of the things I've found with D-Labs. Because they've done this before, they're not only technology partners, they're actually business partners. And they're offering very, very strong advice. You mentioned the unicorns. So what they're saying is, we've actually done this before, and we found in this business, it would be better to go that way. Well, maybe we were planning to go that way. So they're giving us advice, not forcing us. They're saying, this is our experience, and then we can make a decision. Not every technology partner will do that. So that is critical to us, to help us, because in any startup, you make mistakes. And the more you can have somebody covering your back and helping you to avoid those mistakes, the better. But secondly, the focus on detail and what they've delivered has been absolutely superb. So there's somebody I couldn't recommend highly enough.
Absolutely, I looked at the app yesterday. Quite impressive. We're going to take a break here. At home, when we come back, you've already raised money from angel investors.
Yeah.
£2 million. Q3, you're expecting to launch this year. When we come back, we're going to get into that space and find out what you've learned from, because this is not the first time such a business has been launched. You've got Monzo, you've got Revolt, we've got Starling Bank and Nubank. What lessons have you learned from your competition? Join us on the other side.
Remember, a lot of banks here particularly are pulling out of Africa, and it's a very risk-averse culture.
Welcome back to our conversation with Ciaran McSharry, the CEO of Jambo, a digital financial services company. We are in the UK series. Ciaran, I must go to our conversation 2 years ago. You were happy with innovation within the Zimbabwean banking sector, but you thought banks were not innovating enough. You were in a not actual bank, brick and mortar.
Yep.
Bill Gates says banking is necessary, but banks are not necessary. You have transitioned, have you? How has that been like?
Transition was, depends on what you mean by transition. Transition from Zimbabwe to the UK.
From a brick and mortar bank to...
I haven't found that too difficult, I'll be honest with you. You know, the fundamentals of running a business are not that different. However, what you're focusing on, your strategy, will be very, very different. And, you know, with the bricks and mortar bank, you're going to have much greater overheads, more people to worry about, a different style of doing banking. You know, I think we talked before about would the branch network, for example, disappear? And I still believe over time, the branch network won't necessarily disappear, but it will shrink. It will shrink. And, you know, there are banks I know in Zimbabwe who are doing partnerships. So I think it's NMB do a partnership with the post office. And here there are banks closing down branches in towns, villages, etc. And indeed, I mentioned when we talked last time, my own village, where when I moved in 13, 14 years ago, there was something like, I think 3 or 4 banks in there. None now. But the post office serves people. So that's your anchor.
But still people are banking. The banks are not visible, but people are still banking.
People are still banking. And that's the modern generation. Let's look at it, you know, that they are digital. And since I've come back here, so I'm almost a year back now in the UK. Now, if you were to ask me how many times have you gone to the cash point or used or withdrawn cash, do you have a guess how many times I've withdrawn cash since I've come back here? In a year?
I'll say maybe 3, 4 times.
No. Less.
Once.
Yep. And it was just after I came back, we were having something delivered, somebody wanted cash for the delivery. Other than that, everything is paid by my phone or my card. Cash is being removed pretty much. It's very much a minority in terms of transactions now.
So it's been easy to settle down into this mode of doing business.
I must admit, I'm an old school, so I find it sometimes, and I say to my daughters particularly, you know, the ease with which you can transact can cause you a financial problem. So just be careful and watch what you're doing. You know, there was a time when
you are old school, but your co-founders are not old school.
No.
Innocent Chinyama, Takwana Charanani, and you've got Hanzwi Chimbetete. Talk to me about this team. It looks like you are the adult in the room.
Oh, I am, yeah.
2 young co-founders.
I'm granddad.
Talk to me about this team. And has it expanded? Is it expanding?
Well, the core team there will expand, obviously, as we grow. But, you know, Innocent is very much based in Zimbabwe and is focused on helping us trying to bring in capital. Takwana's background is very much marketing, customer acquisition. And he's an entrepreneurial spirit. He's founded other businesses in the past.
Hanzi Chimbetete?
Hanzi is, again...
Retail banking.
So she's worked in the UK for many years. She's a Zimbabwean. But she's great network in terms of, mortgages. She's done a huge amount for people in terms of mortgages, etc. So she understands that, and it's helping us with our customer acquisition as well. And then you've got myself, who has a background of many years in banking, and obviously 6 years of running a business. So it's a good team, and it blends well together. And
how did you find each other?
So I came across Takwana and Innocent through a friend of mine in Zimbabwe, Vernon Lapam.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
I know Vernon very well.
Yeah, okay. So Vernon's one of our advisors.
Yeah.
And before I left Zimbabwe, he said, "Look, Ciaran, can you have a look at this bank?" And I was still with First Capital at the time. And I said to him, let me just finish what I'm doing and I'll have a look. So in October last year, I had a look through what he'd sent me, and we met and had a beer with Vernon and I. And I said, yeah, no, this in face of it seems really, really good opportunity. And I get the business case. However, I'd like to understand more about it. And I think a couple of weeks later, I happened to be in one of the restaurants in our area, and Takwana was there, and he accosted me in a nice way.
Yeah.
And said, "Oh, you're Ciaran McSharry," and we talked about Jambo, etc. And then before Christmas, Vernon phoned me and said, "Look, I'd like you to get more involved in this." So I initially signed up as an advisor, and then it became apparent to Takwana, Innocent, and I that it was going to need more time, at least to get it up and running. So that's where we are. I then became the CEO, and to help them steer to where we are today.
What has it been like? I mean, you got angel investors, like I said, you've got 2 million. You raised £2 million. You've built the technology. What's been that experience like in terms of capital raising for phase one? And I want us to then go to capital raising.
It's tough. We did incredibly well. It's about 800,000 we've actually raised so far in terms of getting us to where we are, largely through friends, family, etc., and on our own individual networks. We're now working on the next phase, which is to raise probably 750,000 we'll aim for. And we've just been signed up by one of the crowdfunding platforms here in the UK, Ncube, and that will go live in the next few weeks. That's tremendously exciting because they don't take anybody on. They want to understand the business case, and they'll only take you on if they believe this business has legs and it's going to get funding. So that will go live in the next couple of weeks. And I would say, as a business, and any startup business, that's always your biggest constraint. Yeah, making sure you've got the capital and the funding to keep the business going. Because you look at your models, you're not going to be profitable in the first couple of years. That's just a fact.
Absolutely.
And a business like we're in, I said this to our D-Labs the other day. I said, like it or not, guys, you're with us now. You're embedded in us, and we are partners for as long as this business survives. Because we'll never stop spending money on technology. We'll never stop innovating.
It's a continuous process.
If we stop innovating, the business dies. So we have to continue to actually innovate.
You're saying it's been tough, and angel investing. Talk to us about that. What have been the pain points?
It's really just taking time, and it's talking to people individually and making sure they understand the use case and the business case. They get that, but you have to talk to a lot of individual people. So it just takes a lot of time and a lot of your energy.
Any specific pushbacks, and what would the reason be for the hesitance of jumping on board?
The only hesitancy we've had is making sure people understand what they're investing in.
Yeah.
Because, generally when you talk to the diaspora, what do they want from an investment? They want some kind of surety.
Yeah.
They want some kind of guarantee, and they want regular returns.
Right.
This isn't a business that's going to give you a regular return, not for some time. This is about putting money in at the early stage and watching your capital grow. It's a venture capital type investment. I always quote Revolut or Monzo, and I think Revolut have only paid one dividend in 8-9 years. And that's only recently. Because all the money, when you get profitable or you start to get cash surplus, you want to put that money back into product development. Yeah. And if you don't, that's, as I say, when you start to die. So it's about capital growth. Now, I'm not suggesting we get to these numbers, but you look at the speed of growth of the likes of Revolut, you look at Monzo, Revolut, I think, is valued at something like 40 billion or 45 billion now. Okay. That's 8-9 years. Monzo, similar, I think it's 8-9 billion it's valued, and that's half that speed. Now, as I say, I'm not holding us out and saying we're going to get to that value. It'd be wonderful if we did. But you look at the opportunity that we have. Africa is just underserved. Revolut, for example, has shut down Zimbabwe. They don't allow you to transact now in Zimbabwe. I don't know whether you're aware of that.
No, I wasn't aware of that.
No, so you can't transact using the Revolut card.
So why is Revolut not in Zimbabwe?
I don't know the specific reasons, but what I can tell you is 2018, 2019, it worked because I used it.
It takes me to this question, which I found very fascinating, that you guys are focusing on the part of the market where others don't want to play. Why?
Because that's where the opportunity is.
But that's where the risk is.
Yes. But at the same time, if you put the right controls in place, you can manage the risk. And remember, what we are banking, we're banking the diaspora in the UK. Okay? So it's an important point that viewers need to understand. If you live in Zimbabwe and you have an address in Zimbabwe, I cannot open a bank account for you. I can open a bank account for you if you're a resident in the UK. And funny enough, we've had this situation particularly related to Northern Ireland, and I won't get into politics, but the border there is very fluid. So people who have an Irish registered phone, but live in Northern Ireland, which happens, want to open an account. And say, sorry, you can't. You have to have a UK phone. So that's to start with. Ultimately, the license we have or the partners we work in here have just got a European banking license. So that will allow us to expand going forward across Europe. But coming back to your point, why focus?
Yeah.
Because that's where the opportunity is. You get the right controls in place. The opportunity is there. What do people want? They want to invest back home. They want to transact.
What controls are we talking about that Revolt has not been able to deal with?
You're talking about the KYC.
Okay.
You're talking about an understanding of the market. Yeah. And it's basically all of those anti-money laundering, all of these processes in place. Remember, a lot of banks here particularly are pulling out of Africa, and it's a very risk-averse culture. Banking in the UK is very risk-averse. I'm still amazed that and I hope nobody from my bank here watches this. But
I will be watching.
But having spent 6 years in Zimbabwe and remitting money back to the UK from my family, I never got a question. I was always waiting for that question. But I know a lot of customers when I was in Zimbabwe came to me and said, well, okay, Barclays, HSBC, etc., they're all closing down my bank in the UK because I've got an address here. So there's a very risk-averse culture in the UK towards banking.
And the advantage that you guys have at the moment is that you understand that space
100%.
Where the risk is.
Yeah.
And you are prepared to put in the controls to ride
exactly.
Yeah.
But you see, because people are banking here, and go back to the remittance point, the wonderful thing about our remittance model, when we got it up and running, is the money does, one of the concerns people have is when you put your money into Zimbabwe, currency risk, policy risk, etc. The money doesn't leave the UK, as I said to you, until you go to the ATM or until you swipe at Spar, Pick and Pay, OK, wherever. The money stays here.
The money is resident here. It goes to Zim to work.
Goes to Zim to work.
Am I right?
Exactly right. That's a great way of putting it. Great way of putting it. Yeah, absolutely.
So let's go back to Nubank, Monzo, Revolt, Sterling Bank. These are 40 billion, 30 billion worth of assets. What lessons have you learned from these? They've been successful, hugely successful digital banks. What lessons have you learned, good and bad?
I think the main lesson I've learned from all of these is, one is, I talked about it before, innovation. You've got to keep churning the product, keep growing the product and the app, etc., and giving greater functionality, greater convenience. These are all built around convenience and ease, together with value for money. Myself, when I went on Revolut the first time I used Revolut was a friend of mine recommended it to me. And the main reason was, he said, if you look at the rates you get when you use a traditional credit card and you travel versus the rate you get using this when you go overseas, the rate on Revolut was far better. So you were getting much greater value for money and the transaction costs were lower, plus the convenience. So that's why I went to Revolut. personally. And that's what customers will do.
Yeah.
They'll come to you when you can provide them convenience and ease of use and value for money. And I think that's what we can do relative to our competition, particularly on the banking side here. It's fairly banking here in this country is probably plain vanilla, so not really. It's the remittance side, but it's also for our customers, I think, having everything in one app. And as I say, giving them control.
Right. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want us to go to your client acquisition and activation, and also go to a project that you are pretty passionate about, the British Africa Business Alliance and what you're doing there. So please don't go away. See you on the other side.
This is an African bank founded by Africans for Africans. It's a huge opportunity.
Welcome back to our UK series, where I'm having a conversation with Ciaran McSharry, the CEO of Jambo, a digital financial services company. So before we took a break there, Ciaran, we're already speaking about the risk and the opportunity. The market is huge. 250,000 Zimbabweans, approximately 180,000, 11 million people in the diaspora in the UK and Europe. Yeah, but we've spoken about the risk. We've spoken about banks picking up their closing their banks in Zimbabwe and that kind of stuff. What are you doing with market activation and getting people to know what you're doing?
Sure. So I think there's a couple of things, and the numbers are fascinating. All the numbers you talk about, there's over 100 million Africans living outside of Africa. I heard a number, I think it's 150. Just think of that. And probably, I guess, maybe 50% of those, maybe less in the US, but that's still 80 odd million living in Europe. So think about the opportunity.
Yeah.
The customer acquisition, our starting point, as I said earlier, is to launch quietly. And I think that's important, that we don't go and do a full launch, because you can lose a reputation very quickly.
Yeah. So
let's make sure everything's working and we've got a very clear use case for our customers as they come on board. So we're going to start with, we talked about, this 500 people, 400 or 500 people who have invested so far into Jambo. And we've always said to them, remember, you're the owners of this. So that's our first port of call in terms of customer acquisition.
Yeah.
The second then is through the various networks. There was a huge diaspora network here. And that can be through the churches, but it's through business networks, it's through word of mouth, etc. So we will do some advertising, but we're going to utilize all of those networks to bring customers on board. And there's other projects we're working on where I think we can get this message out. But the key thing,
the number, before you go to the key thing, the number that really, jumped at me is that 90% of Africa's 1.7 trillion retail transactions are conducted in cash.
Yeah.
So that's a market for you.
Absolutely.
That's ready with about 350 million Africans who are underbanked. So that's an opportunity for you. Talk to me about how to plug into that opportunity.
So I think there's a huge confidence issue. And remember, here in the UK particularly, we're at a time where I think the migrant population is feeling pretty marginalized. You just have to look at all the noise that's around, not just here, but you hear it in the US as well, lead up to the US election. They lead up to the election here about migration. And I know people are talking about the small boats, etc., but it's wider than that. So people are feeling very marginalized. So the opportunity here for us is that, as I said earlier, this is an African bank founded by Africans for Africans. It's a huge opportunity. It's backed by, if you look at the infrastructure, we've got a very solid base, The money, as I said, stays in the UK, so there's a good trustworthy level here. But we're allowing you to bridge the connection between here and Africa.
Let's go to your next issue, next exciting project that you're working on, which is you're working with the British Africa Business Alliance. What's that all about?
So that's an interesting one, and it came to me through a guy called David Smith, who I'd seen on LinkedIn, but we met at an event at the Zimbabwe embassy a couple of months ago. And as we talked, we realized, there's a huge amount of synergies and opportunities here. And so if I can give a plug, just going back to Jambo, one of the things through British Africa Business Alliance, there's two things. One is it's a network. It's a business network. All right. And what I said to David, as we were talking about Jambo, I said, I'd love to be able to promote Jambo through your network, which we will do. So that's one option of not just customer acquisition, but also about investment. So one of the key things and the constraints for a Jambo business is capital investment. I mentioned Crowdcube. So if any of the viewers are excited about this opportunity, and I truly believe there's a massive return here, they should go onto our app, Jamboo.app.
We're going to share the details. You share them.
So Jamboo.app, not .com or anything like that, but .app, Jamboo.app. You can download the app, and then within the app, there is the ability to click invest, and you can invest through Crowdcube. Equally, you can look me up under LinkedIn, and you can message me, talk to me directly, and we can look at that. But I believe this is going to be a great opportunity for anybody who's willing to invest, even if it's a small amount, put some money in, including you, Trevor.
Of course, why not? Of course.
But British Africa Business Alliance is wider than that. So David founded this organization many years ago, and it is about building a network for the diaspora and business community here. And it's about, helping them network with fellow Africans, sharing experience, trying to help each other in terms of either build a business, solve problems, etc. But it's also about helping people where they've got projects they want to launch. How do they get those projects off the ground? How do they get funding? How do they get financing? So there's a network of, if you like, regions that we work that he works off. So, for example, just about to launch one in Northern Ireland, and it's funny, he got in touch with somebody in Northern Ireland about being the Northern Ireland regional director. And as he was talking to me about it, I said, but I know him. Very, very good friend of mine. And he's always just moved to Northern Ireland to try and set up his own business about, for the Irish market, bringing one of the things in Ireland is a shortage of medical workers, care workers, no surprise there, but also on the hospitality front. And of course, there's a huge market in Zimbabwe, opportunity to bring people over. Anyway, so we're going to build those networks to try and help bring people together. But aside from that, we've also then got the British Africa Funding Institute, which is about helping build a business case and then trying to find and connect the people with money here, that can be the diaspora, and getting them to invest in Africa, but also opening doors for people to invest. There's a lot of African banks here in the UK. We just have to actually work with them, put the right product and the right project together and get funding.
You're already working on looking at some opportunities in Zimbabwe. Talk to me about that, what you're able to share,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I won't go into details of the companies, but, I talked to somebody last week who is a Zimbabwean, and he's got a solar business in Zimbabwe, and they're looking for funding. So what I was able to do was to connect him to a number of people, to have a conversation with them about, because the growth of that business may not be down to just going to the bank or getting funding. It could be about merging. It could be about partnership. So there's more than one way you can scale and grow a business. So we're trying to help him through that process. There is a project on the I think it's the Zimbabwe commercial, it's one of the farmers unions who are looking
Commercial Farmers Union.
Yes, yes, who are looking at the whole irrigation and the whole infrastructure of farming, the value add on agric, etc., and putting a project together. Conversation there between one of the banks and ourselves, again, trying to bridge that. There's another one in a business guy in Bradford, again, Zimbabwean. He's talking in Bulawayo about a whole energy platform, which will be about solar, but it's also about waste energy.
Yeah.
And then taking some of the profits out of that and investing it back into the community. So building housing, building schools, a vocational college.
Right.
And then using the vocational college to put skills in people, and then using the profits from that to put back in to bring more people on board, build houses, etc. Huge opportunity. That's just Zimbabwe.
I mean, the thing, Ciaran, is there's lots of ideas. People have lots of ideas, but ideas are not enough to start businesses.
Absolutely
you need funding, and I think that's a gap that we always come across.
Well, there's two aspects to it. There's the funding, 100%.
Yeah.
There's also having the right people.
Yeah.
Because you can have a great idea, but if you're not a business person and you don't understand how it works, the idea can fail. So we have to make sure that they've got the right people, but also we get the right funding. There's equally people who will have ideas that just aren't ready at this stage. So part of the job and the role we will play at, Baba and the Financing Institute is to actually review these and only put forward the ones we really believe in. That we think have legs, and if they haven't, then we help people how we can develop that business case.
Tell me, startups are not always easy to. Not all startups survives. Let me put it that way. What keeps you awake as far as this project is concerned?
Capital, raising funding. That's one of the things. The rest of it, the other thing I think is building the right strategic partnerships. And, we talked earlier about the development and D-Labs and how good they are. It's critical when we build strategic partnerships, whether it's insurance, investments, etc., that we build them with partners who understand what we're trying to do. And I think we talked about this before. Business isn't just about one side winning. If you have that relationship, it doesn't work. It's like a marriage, it's give and take. You both have to have the opportunity to win. So those are probably two or three things. It's making sure we've got the right products to scale, we get the right funding in, and that we work with the right partners. I'm absolutely convinced this is a great product and will succeed. We just have to get the conditions right.
Fascinating. I'm excited about what you're doing, and you and I having talked 2 years ago, and seeing you here in London. And so excited about what you're doing. We wish you all the very best. I mean, this is an important project. Very important. It covers the entire continent. It presents huge opportunities for investments and business growth, which is what the continent requires. Particularly Zimbabwe, the Zimbabweans in the diaspora who we're talking to. Shall we do books? Couple of books that you've read?
There's a couple of books I've read recently, and I'm going to forget the names. The first one is easy because I read Keir Starmer's biography. I kind of thought earlier in the year, well, the man is going to be the next UK Prime Minister. Let me read it and understand a bit more, which was interesting.
Do you recommend the book? Is it a good book?
I found it interesting. I think you have to have an interest in politics and etc. The couple of books that I was recommended by some people in Zimbabwe, business books. One was the $1 Trillion Coach.
I've read that one.
And just started that, and I'm really enjoying that. So that's a good book. That's a very, very good book. And then there's another one, and the name of it is gone from me, but I've had it on my desk for I don't know how many years, but I'm really starting to try and get into it now. But it's about the history of Africa. And it goes back to the colonial times. I can come back to you with the name. I probably have it in my notebook. I have it in my notebook.
Please do.
But I just can't remember the name of it at the moment.
You're like me. I forgot names. Thank you very much, Ciaran, for that. For viewers out there, remember we've started our book club. And I've been sharing with quite a number of you. I'm reading a lot on China. I'm trying to understand China. And the more I read about China, the more I'm fascinated about what the Chinese are doing. And I get the sense that we don't quite understand the Chinese. And I've actually decided that I'm going to read books on China written by Chinese, which is different from what the West is telling us about China. And I'm absolutely delighted. We're going to share the two books that I've I've read there. Like Ciaran, I tend to forget the titles and the authors. So go to our book club. We've got a link. Go to our book club, which is on WhatsApp. Ciaran, thank you so much for being here.
Absolute
Allow
pleasure.
me to tend to the viewers who are at home all over the world. Thank you for watching the UK series. Remember, we are on YouTube every Monday, 7 a.m. Central African time. And to ensure that you don't miss out on any of these quality conversations, I invite you to subscribe, to like, and to share. Go to our website where we've got all our content, podcasts and all, for your listening pleasure. As you clean your house, the car, and that kind of stuff, you can binge on our content. We love reading your comments on the show. So scroll down, share your comments, and share the videos. Until next time, cheers to you all.